Hello everyone. Welcome to the first of the breakout sessions. So, as a reminder for those of us who are joining online or are curious after the fact, you can get the speaker bios on the event page under the speakers tab. Also, make sure to check out the online exhibitors. All the booths are in the virtual space, so you can go there, share your info, connect with them. Don't forget to network with the many online folks. There's about 150 who've tuned in this morning, so certainly take advantage of that, get online, connect with those people as well. And for our next session, please join me in welcoming our next presenter for building an inclusive business strategy, Kevin Keado, President of Equal.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me all right. As you just heard, my name is Kevin Keado, pronouns are he, him. Super excited to be here on behalf of Equal, which is United Airlines LGBTQ Business Resource Group. This topic in particular, one I'm super passionate about. Been with United for almost 14 years. Been in leadership at Equal for the past 4.5. And what I'll talk through today is a little bit about how we've helped culturally shift, I would say, some of the policies at United Airlines to really be industry leading and be inclusive. And it doesn't happen easily, I think, probably from the folks in this room. And I do apologize for not being able to be there in person. It is a busy month of June, as I'm sure you're all aware, and I'm on my Rainbow Road show, if you will. So we'll try to get through this virtually, but certainly if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out, and I hope that my contact information and all that's available to you. What I'll walk through a little bit here today is kind of what Equal is, and as I share a little bit, we're United's LGBTQ Business Resource Group. This gives a little bit of a snapshot of where we are. So we have one kind of mothership, I guess you would say, in Chicago at our headquarters. That's our national board that's based there. But we have chapters in every one of our hub locations. We also have a chapter in Latin America and over in Europe as well. And that's equates to about 3,900 members, which is pretty incredible when you think about the size, the depth, and the breadth of the company. We're one of the largest business resource groups at United, and they talk about how we've gotten to a place where we've really been able to help mold policy and procedure at United. It really is a grassroots effort, but it's a partnership. It's a partnership between the front line, between the employees, but it's a partnership between outside companies as well, and also a partnership with leadership. And so I think as I talked through it, we certainly didn't get any of this stuff done without the support of internal departments and leaders who kind of were vulnerable enough to ask the right questions and support things that maybe they weren't super comfortable talking about or trying to dictate themselves. So we're super excited to have been able to do that. So a little bit about how we've done it, and I'll go into what we've done. But to give a little bit of background, this is how the approach at Equal has shifted away from, at our inception, was really much about building community, which is important, right? Getting members involved and engaged was foundational for our group. But when we talk about really shifting from what was more of a social events-based group to one that was going to drive change, drive business impact, it was really about three kind of big things. The strategic partnerships, so that's not just partnering internally. Partnering internally really, from our perspective, was important, but also understand what other companies, not only in our industry, but outside industry, were doing, where they were having roadblocks, what best practice sharing is, and then also trying to be a leader in the space, not just always waiting to see what worked well at some locations or other companies, but really kind of building a web and casting a wide net, if you will, both internally and externally. The second piece is Pride 365, and I say this because in June, and you see it now, it's real easy to turn a logo rainbow during the month of June and get on board when it's easy and everyone else is doing it. But weaving it into kind of our fabric and making sure it's part of our culture is a huge focus here. So we celebrate June and it's out there and we're loud and we're proud like everyone else during June, but we also do it the other 11 months out of the year. So making sure, again, that and it goes back to partnership, that we're not only partnering internally, and it goes to departments like our global community engagement. Who are they partnering? What are the nonprofits and the other groups that we want to support and can help leverage to show that support year round? Working with our corporate communications team to make sure that we're not just doing it in June, but it's something that's weaved into all these different notable days and events throughout the year. And then also working with our government and regulatory affairs community, right? We fly to 339 destinations all over the world. There's going to be locales there that are far more LGBTQ friendly than others, but we overnight cruise there. Our employees may live there. And so making sure that we have a safe space for all them, no matter where they're from and where they hail from. We literally have employees in I think close to 200 countries that we serve. So it's incredibly important. 200 different cities where we have our own dedicated employees. So it's really important that we have far reach and that we work with our government and regulatory affairs team to stay kind of in close contact with what policies we need to help influence and just kind of raise to the top. And then the last piece that I'll talk about is kind of development, recruitment, and education. I touched on this earlier, having leaders support this, leaders who are straight, cisgender, getting them more comfortable in a space that they may not be super familiar with, may be afraid to ask questions about. It comes down to education. And so we've worked a lot with our internal departments to make sure we had a structure in place to consult, to educate leaders who are not comfortable in the space, but know that they want to learn more and want to do the right thing. And the development and the recruitment piece really looks forward, right? We're in a component right now, our chapter, I guess you could say, of our company, where we're looking forward to the future and growth. And what does that mean? What does that mean for the LGBTQ community? We want to make sure that we develop the talent that we have here and we find opportunities for the LGBTQ community so that leaders today can influence their departments for tomorrow and can do so in an authentic way. So we want a pathway for LGBTQ people to be in positions of leadership, to have that platform and to be able to use it to help elevate other LGBTQ folks, but also to raise issues that are pertinent to our community. And then the last piece is the recruitment, right? We have another generation that's going to follow behind. And we want to not only highlight United's a safe place to come and work, but it's the type of place that it's worth investing your time and your effort and your career, right? We spend a lot of time at work. We put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And this is a type of place where, I say this, it's not, I firmly believe United Airlines is the type of place where you don't have to put on your uniform and go back into a closet. You don't have to barter with your authenticity for opportunity. And that's really important. And we want to share that. We also want the next generation to know that this is the type of place to come and invest a career, not just a job for a couple months or years. And so that making sure that all our recruitment programs, that some of the innovative things that we've seen or that we're working on, like Aviate, which is our pilot training school, the LGBTQ is a part of that. And we have opportunities for that next generation to know this is a safe place for them to come and invest a career. And so I talk about representation matters. I think we all know that. Probably everyone in this room, I wish I could see everybody, but I think we can agree that representation matters. And sometimes doing things that are out there and show a commitment to community is really important. I spoke to our officer group just earlier this week, and what I had said is, every one of these departments within our company have LGBTQ folks in that organization, and they all have varying different comfortability coming out at work and sharing with their boss. And so we need allies. We need allies to know that we're out there, we're proud, and we're going to celebrate our authenticity. We're going to celebrate our uniqueness. And that's what we did this past December. I'm quite sure at United Airlines, this was not the first all LGBTQ plus flight, but it was the first time that we did it intentionally. We had folks self-nominate. We worked with their base leadership to make sure that they were in good standing, right? But we wanted to celebrate and highlight the contributions of an all LGBTQ plus crew and what that meant. That was not, and so I'll step back a minute too. The crew was all LGBTQ. This was not an all LGBTQ plus passenger flight. It was a normal passenger flight. We sold for sale like any other one. At the end, no, throughout the flight, we had obviously some celebrations beforehand in the gate area in the terminal, but we also on board the aircraft, the crew really kind of celebrated that too. That you can see they had the rainbow masks. We did this right on the heels of World AIDS Day as well, so you can see the red ribbons. But at the end of the flight, we had the purser on that make an arrival announcement, kind of celebrating and saying, this is the type of place I get to do this and get to be myself. And the whole flight ended up erupting in applause, which we had people coming from all over, going to all over, and it was really an incredible thing to witness. So representation matters. Doing these things matter. Getting leaders to support something where we can go and stamp a revenue flight as an LGBTQ flight, super important. So really proud about that. But again, it's about grassroots, and unless it's weaved entirely through our culture, it feels inauthentic. And so it's things like this that really do help us measure and make sure that we're doing the right thing and doing it from a grassroots perspective. And so I'll talk through a little bit about, at the beginning of the pandemic, I shared, I think our group was a little bit more focused on community building and event-based, which is important. And we continue to do that. We continue to do that to this day. But the other thing that I'll touch on here, we also, during the pandemic, when we were separate and couldn't do those things, we decided we can better focus our time and attention on changing policy here that not only helps the broad LGBTQ community, but some of the smallest and most least represented segments of our community that we have. We rolled out a single appearance standard for our frontline employees. There's no longer a male appearance standard or a female appearance standard. This one came with a lot of hesitation from some internal groups, so we had to help them understand and bring them along on this journey of why it was important. So today at United, we have one single appearance standard for our frontline customer-facing employees. We believe it's industry leading. That's not to say other airlines aren't doing something similar, but we really believe that the appearance standard that we have today allows people to come, show up as they are authentically, feel comfortable in their own skin, and then show our customers that as well, and make our customers feel just as welcome. The other things that we have on here, the Getting to Know You is our first ever self-ID campaign. Voluntary, of course, but when I talk about the other things, understanding what recruitment looks like for the next generation, understand how we develop the talent we have, understanding the departments where we have our biggest challenges and where we need more LGBTQ representation. This self-ID campaign is super important. It really allows folks to go in and self-identify as LGBTQ, get much more specific about race and demographics, right down to things like disability. So we worked kind of cross BRGs to put this in place, but this allows people to raise their hand and be counted, but it also allows us to use this data to say, where do we have opportunity, where do we need representation, and where do we have more work to do? The pronoun usage, again, this was something that was a lot of hesitation. Folks needed to learn and understand, but today at United, you'll see a lot more pronouns in folks' email addresses, in their email signatures. We're going to continue. This will be a multi-year evolution, but our goal will be to have this on things like name pins. And again, woven throughout our every step of your journey, not only as a customer, but as an employee, to truly come to work as you are and feel comfortable doing it and be addressed how you want to be addressed. And the last piece, this one does go back to 2019, but we were the first ever U.S. airline to add the MX title for customers, non-gender specific non-binary gender markers to our booking code. So customers can go in and choose MX. You're starting to see this now a lot more in the U.S. with, I believe they've now added a change for passports. So we were really industry leading here and super proud of this as well. And we were able to help influence these sorts of things, not just internal policy, but customer facing as well. And so all this kind of culminates with some of what we have achieved, and I'm really proud that our 11th year this past year of getting 100% corporate equality index score from the HRC here in the US. that was a huge achievement for us. We're really proud of that and continue to work towards that. We know that these are things we have to work at every day. But it's some of these results that we're able to put up that we're really, really proud of. And I'm proud of the work that Equal's done to make sure and secured that we've been able to do this for more than a decade. So kind of just looking ahead, I spoke to a lot of this at a high level, but the work that we continue to do is super important. And we're at a point now in this country, in the US, I should say, where things like Don't Say Gay bills and anti-trans legislation really threatens to erode the policy and the progress that we've made as a community over a half century. So if we don't keep our foot on the gas, it's alarming to think where we could go and step back to. And so I say that to say that, large corporations, we have to, as a BRG, really help make sure we're raising these issues and elevating them. And when we can use the platform for good, we do it. And so some of what our 2022 vision looks like is to continue to expand upon the things we've done. But as we build, as we grow as a company, make sure we have a restroom strategy that's inclusive, that we have medical plan offerings that are inclusive of our trans brothers and sisters, for our non-binary brothers and sisters, that we need to have all sorts of a suite of offerings that really meets our entire diverse community. And we're only going to get there by raising those issues. We have a lot of dialogue with our membership on a frequent basis as we roll out new things like our medical plans. We need to make sure that this is in touch with the community that we represent. I spoke about Pride. That continues and will continue to be a focus of ours on a year-round basis. We'll march in 12 different parades, and after 2 years away, I'm excited to say that we'll get back out there and march this year as a company, and it's getting allies out there to help support us as well. The membership piece, as you can see, that's still a big part of what we want to do, and it's still a pillar of the work that we do, even as we've shifted to more policy shifting work. And then last but not least, having a wide net is really kind of, as we come out of the pandemic, having a wide net. I shared with you where we have chapters. For us, it is about casting a wide net. It's having contact in places that may be less LGBTQ friendly, and making sure that we have a place and a safe place for those employees to come and be themselves and raise issues when they see them, whether that's workplace, whether that's at home, and how we can help support. And so having a good, strong chapter structure throughout our network is incredibly important to us. And that's one that we continue to focus on here as we come out of the pandemic. So with that, I appreciate everyone for bearing with me here virtually. And also, again, incredibly sorry that I wasn't able to join in person, but I will kind of pause there. I'm not sure if we open it up for questions, but happy to take whatever you have.
Hello?
Grabbing a mic.
Hello.
So I'm just curious about, you talk a lot about kind of leadership and having your leadership on board and making sure it's authentic. What did that look like when you were bringing this to the senior leadership teams and you were bringing these types of programming? How did you talk to them about it, and how did you kind of convince them and inspire them to get more involved in this kind of work?
Yeah, great question. So I would say we're fortunate for a couple reasons. One, United has supported the BRGs by putting into place an executive sponsor structure. So each of us is paired with kind of an officer level, so VP level, but then also an executive level member who's our support, who's our executive sponsor, which really opens up some dialogue there on a regular basis. So we're fortunate that our executive vice president of HR and labor relations, Kate Gibo, is our executive sponsor. She's really helped shepherd this stuff along. We're also fortunate that our vice president of contact center, so kind of our call centers where customers call in if they need to book a ticket or whatnot. Brian Stoller is also an executive sponsor. Brian's a member of the community, Kate is not. So educating, but like I talked about, having that vulnerability to go out and say, hey, I know there's an issue here. I may not be an expert on it, but I want to learn. And I know that there's a group out here who's willing to help educate me and also create a safe space for me to come in and ask ignorant questions I may not be super comfortable with, but I'm going to come in and educate. So I think it's really twofold, right? It's having grassroots so that we have employees that are telling us what is important to them, but having a close connection to leadership. And you know, that's been an evolution. When they put the BRGs in place, this is going back about 8 years ago, it was far more, like I said, employee-based and kind of event-based. And as this shift to drive business impact, leadership here really said, if we're going to drive true sustainable impact, we have to have kind of a connection. It has to be two ways. And so we built real strong relationships and leveraged kind of our executive sponsors to help us do that. And it's been very successful. And like I said, it really is a partnership, because if it's always just the BRG kind of making noise, and there's not buy-in from above and kind of throughout the organization, it does make it tough. So we've really had to work to build good relationships internally and across the organization, but also with our executive sponsors to help shepherd these things across, and even issues that, like I said, they may not be super comfortable with and may not understand. It's kind of bringing them along that journey, and that's how we've been able to make it happen.
Do we have any online submissions? Do we want to maybe just check one of those when we've got another minute? I can ask one as well. I guess one of the ones I'm curious about is, what do you do when things go south and you're trying to manage the, I guess the essence of leaning into creating the sort of accountability space internally to address it and actually correct the mistake, but still manage the public image of something that has gone south and trying to be proactive there?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this happen many times, right? Even an event that we tried to host last year, which was probably one that I think a large portion of probably the broader audience was not super keen on it. And it kind of got to the core of this intersection between religion and being LGBTQ and what that looks like. I was very uncomfortable for certain folks, and I'll be honest with you, even some folks on the board were kind of like, is this the right direction to take? So again, I really think it's about having good, strong partnerships and relationships, and being open to hearing both sides of the argument. We had it brought to us from our DEI group saying, hey, this may not be the right thing to bring into work. So it was a long conversation with them, but basically sharing our perspective, but also kind of understanding too, like there's going to be things that I don't want to say we have to tiptoe on, but we have to move through a little bit more tactfully or slowly, or can't just throw out there to the broader audience right away. So it was one of those things we ended up tweaking the program, right? And to make it more focused on kind of the intersection of, we actually brought in a local pastor, LGBTQ pastor here in Chicago, made it more about the intersectionality between kind of the community and the community that he served and kind of his journey and how creates a safe space for folks to come in and learn, and less about the religious aspect, because again, that was something that was very polarizing. But I think it was finding a yes, right, and finding a compromise as opposed to one side needs to win here. And I think when we approach things from that perspective, it tends to get more buy-in. And again, we found a way here to tackle in a more tactful way, but also get to a place where everyone is comfortable moving forward with the program. But I think we only do that with good dialogue and good partnerships, right? If we didn't have a good dialogue and partnership internally, and we were always just kind of going out shooting to win, that would be tough, right? But I really believe that we always go out and look for a compromise that's going to be positive for our community, but one that we know, but we do it in a way that we're going to get buy-in along the way. And so I think that to me is how we've navigated when we've got our biggest challenges. This one issue in particular, but that no doubt has been our most successful, I think, secret sauce is just looking for compromise.
Yeah, so I mean, not being afraid to compromise and not being afraid to take that shot and maybe not get it 100% right the first time certainly seems like an interesting approach. I'm guessing, though, that also there are points where you have sort of a surprise victory or surprise spillover. Are there other examples where your inclusivity work in this regard has benefited work with other equity groups or mental wellness, other practices internally?
Yeah, I think a great example of this is that Getting to Know You, that self-ID campaign. That was something we wanted to do for quite a long time. And we just wanted it because, there's no other way at the moment. LGBTQ can kind of be the invisible one, the invisible elephant in the room, if you will. You don't really identify in any component of our, any way internally in any of our systems. And how do you recruit for LGBTQ folks? And so this was something we always wanted to do, where we didn't recognize that there was such a need was kind of across groups. And so when we started talking and sharing a little bit more about why we wanted to do this and why it was important to us, we started talking to our other BRGs here and found that there was actually a lot of interest within their own groups and their own communities. And that was one that there was a big lift and investment here from a technology standpoint to be able to do this. So it wasn't just this is the right thing to do, but we're going to have to put some money behind it to change some systems here to be able to capture this and do so in a way that it's confidential and people feel good and safe and comfortable doing it. And so when we really started, again, it came down to power in numbers. And when we started to listen and talk about this across BRG, the surprise was that this was something everyone was really looking to do.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for the session, and thank you for highlighting as well the value of focusing on the relationships, pushing through the journey, not being afraid for that distance traveled, and not being shy to face some discomfort. So thank you, everybody, for attending the session. If you want to connect more with Keado, you're welcome to do so online. It's a good incentive there to get online and network with those folks also. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon and your next sessions. Thank you, Keado.
Our next sessions are about to begin. Supplier Diversity Impact will take place in the Frontenac Room. Introduction to Design Thinking will take place in the Queen's Quay 1 Room. Retail Renaissance, Small Businesses Look to the Future will take place in the Queen's Quay 2 Room.
Please note the change of room. Retail Renaissance, Small Businesses Look to Future will take place in the Bay Room. Again, the Bay Room, not Queen's Quay 2. Thank you.
Keep the door open.
Our next sessions are about to begin. Supplier diversity impact will take place in the Frontenac room. Introduction to design thinking will take place in the Queen's Key, room 1 and 2. Retail Renaissance Small Businesses Look to the Future will take place in the Bay room. Thank you.
Well, a very good morning, folks. Once again, my name is AJ Stewart. I'm the Manager of Membership and Supplier Diversity at CGLCC. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for our virtual attendance as well. We have over 150 virtual attendees to our summit, so welcome to you as well. A reminder that speaker bios are available on the event page under the speaker tab. And while you're online, I encourage you to visit our exhibitors who are happy to share how they can help you succeed in your business. While you are visiting our exhibitors, we encourage you to network with some of the folks who are participating virtually as well. Not just in-person networking is available during this event. We have lots and lots of virtual aspects. Now, please join me in welcoming your presenter for Supplier Diversity Impact, How Social Imperative Became a Business Imperative, Vice President, Partner Success for Hootology. Joining us virtually, please help me welcome Jose Delgado. Thank you.
So picture it. You walk into your next annual budget meeting for your supplier diversity initiative. You stand confidently at the end of the boardroom table, and you're able to point to the presentation slide on the monitor behind you and say, 60% of consumers think that our brand is one that's committed to diversity. But among those who are aware of our supplier diversity initiative, 93% believe our brand values diversity. And those who perceive our brand as one that values diversity are nearly 2.5 times more likely to purchase our products and services. Hi, I'm Jose Delgado, VP Partner Success at Hootology. And I want to begin by thanking the CGLCC for the opportunity to be here today to have a conversation with you all about diversity and supplier diversity, and specifically what we've learned over the past 5 years at Hootology about the impact of these initiatives on the brand and bottom line, and how your peers are using this new understanding to show how what was once just a social imperative is now also a business imperative. But before we dive in, you might be sitting there thinking, what on earth is a Hootology? Hootology is a modernized market research agency. Modernized market research sounds like we're trying to make something incredibly boring sound exciting, like an engaging endodontist or perhaps a lively lawyer. No offense to any of my JDs in the crowd, I too am a recovering lawyer. No, at Hootology, we're modernizing market research through technology, consumer psychology, and sociology. And our all-star dream team of market research professionals have worked with half of the Fortune 100. And you'll notice there's a really wide array of backgrounds on this slide. And that's not by accident, that's by design. It's because at Hootology, we're really focused on merging the art and science of information gathering to help our clients get the best information possible to make their important strategic decisions. At Hootology, we're known for 3 things. We're known for our large-scale custom market research, of which I'll share just a few examples with you to give some context about how we go about collecting information. We're also known for our corporate diversity index, and that's where those initial numbers I shared came from. Those are blinded, of course, and they're actually relative to an aggregate of retail brands in the US, but we'll use them throughout today's presentation just for illustration purposes. And we're also known for our consumer loyalty assessment, which assesses how brand loyalty is created. Topic for a totally different day, but always happy to have that conversation if it sounds of interest. So when we talk about custom market research, we work primarily with Fortune 500 brands, and we always begin with a high-level question. So, for example, we recently designed an experiential qualitative study instead of an old-school focus group to help a Fortune 50 tech brand understand which of 7 technologies were most ripe for investment and to pick which ones to invest in that would give them the best opportunity to maximize revenue today. We also recently worked to create a hybrid quantitative and qualitative study, leveraging the best of video technology on your phone to help a Fortune 50 CPG beverage brand modernize its branding by identifying through lines for authentic connection among target segments to attract new younger drinkers without alienating their most loyal customers. And finally, we are currently using a multi-layered and highly bespoke set of qualitative experiences to help a Fortune 200 healthcare brand dive deep into 7 different historically marginalized communities to help them authentically serve and engage these groups. So that's custom market research. Now let's shift our focus to the topic of today, supplier diversity impact, how the social imperative became a business imperative. But to do so, I ask that you take a journey back in time with me to when Hootology was first certified as an LGBTBE and WBE through the NGLCC and WeBank, and to where most good stories start, the conference hotel bar, which, by the way, sorry I can't be there in person to share in some of those moments with you, but I'm sure you're creating them this entire past couple of days. But it's at that bar where, through conversation with your peers, we noticed a disconnect between what we saw and what we heard. What we saw was how hard you folks were all working, attending various events, putting on various workshops, and really vetting and preparing thousands and thousands of suppliers to diversify your supply base. But what we heard sometimes was a certain frustration around not being taken as seriously, particularly supplier diversity, as a strategic initiative internally as you knew and believed it could be. So as the nerdy researchers in the room, we asked the question, how are you measuring the impact of your supplier diversity initiatives? At that time, we heard 3 answers typically. It was, we're tracking our awards, we're measuring and keeping track of how much we spend with diverse suppliers over the course of the year. And some folks were doing what's called an economic impact study. So taking that spend number, plugging it into an algorithm, and looking at, what is the potential impact external to the walls of the organization in terms of contributing to job creation and things like that. All important things, but what was missing was the impact on the brand and the bottom line. So about 5 years ago now, we set out to design the Corporate Diversity Index. It's an annual study. It's a quantitative study where we go out currently in the US, talk to a representative sample of consumers. And although it's focused on the US, I would venture that we'd see some crossover in terms of US consumers and Canadian consumers. And so just something as we speak through these numbers and our findings, some food for thought as you continue to build out your programs and think about your reporting structure. But with the Corporate Diversity Index, just like any of our custom market research studies, we started with a high-level question. It was focused on how do we show the impact on the brand and the bottom line when it comes to our supplier diversity and diversity initiatives, and ultimately help prove the business case. So when we set out, we knew at the time that awareness of supplier diversity was relatively low. You all told us that. Currently in the US, it's between 4 and 5% of US general population consumers who are aware of what supplier diversity is today. Just a quick note about this visual. There's 100 icons here, so each icon represents 1% of the US general population. But with that 4 or 5%, we're certainly not discouraged. The brands that we work with are not discouraged. For your information, that's steady from last year, and it's certainly on the rise since we started tracking this information back in 2019. But where the magic really happens is when we focus in on that 4 to 5%, and we understand the impact and the difference among those individuals when it comes to brand favorability, consideration, market share, and the impact that awareness of supplier diversity has on the perception of a brand as being committed to diversity. But we didn't stop there. We also look at the importance of corporations valuing diversity. And currently, around 60% of US consumers think that it's very important that corporations value diversity. So once again, understanding the impact on this group in terms of brand favorability, market share, and consideration can give us a lot of valuable information in terms of the potential impact of supplier diversity and perception of being committed to diversity. And so when we look at these numbers, it's important to keep in mind that we're talking about really large numbers of consumers and an opportunity to make a really big impact. So, in the US, when we talk about a 1% lift in awareness of supplier diversity, we're talking about roughly 2.6 million adult consumers. And I think if I've done my math correctly in Canada, we're talking about over 300,000 adult consumers. And so we're talking really big numbers and an opportunity to make a pretty big impact in terms of our organizations. So over the past 5 years, what we've seen at Hootology is the growth of diversity professionals using data from the CDI about consumers to help demonstrate the impact of diversity and supplier diversity to justify, to elevate, to bridge, and to strategize. And we'll talk about what each one of those means and provide some examples along the way. When it comes to justify, what we're seeing is your peers using this type of consumer data in addition to what they already have to justify increased investment and growth of their initiatives. So, for example, instead of speaking about we spent an additional $500,000 with diverse suppliers this year, talking about how the investment in increasing awareness of our diversity initiative by just 1% could result in 670,000 new Coca-Cola drinkers, and understanding the difference in terms of how that might land internally when we're talking about justifying increased budget for our program. We're not saying traditional metrics are no longer important. They certainly are, but they're only part of the story. And so what I'd love to do now is let you hear from a few of your peers about how they're reporting and taking it to the next level by using this additional layer of information.
Well, I operate in the retail space, and even though traditional supplier diversity metrics are always still important to gauge a successful supplier diversity program, retail, as you know, is very external facing, it's customer facing. And so we really needed some additional metrics, and that's where Hootology came in. The Hootology research that was performed for us on behalf of all of the brands of Ahold Delhaize USA really showed our customers' perception of the individual brands, what they thought about diversity as well as supplier diversity, and then really ranked certain things that were important to the consumer. And that is just the language of our marketing and merchandising teams. And that is what has been so helpful to really propel our supplier diversity program forward.
It is so important to move beyond just measuring spend or getting an economic impact report produced by someone. Driving change in any organization, UPS or any large organization, you have to be smart about it. You have to understand what motivates other people's behavior. And what I find is that using the insights and the data from the Corporate Diversity Index is really powerful when speaking to other functions. Specifically our marketing group. When I sit down with our marketing group and our communications team, and I'm going to expand that even to our larger DEI workforce, and they start to see the connections between awareness in supplier diversity and a company's commitment to diversity. And as more people are aware of supplier diversity, their perception of our company's commitment to diversity grows. And then they can see the connection in business decision makers' purchase decisions. And you can start aligning supplier diversity to revenue. Now you're in a position to elevate the conversation, engage a broader group of the organization in what you're doing, and have them start to realize that the impact of supplier diversity is so much bigger than just the suppliers you pick. It is the environment and the world that we're creating, and the CDI helps us tell that story.
So those of you know Chris know she's incredibly humble, and what she doesn't mention in that video is that by incorporating this type of consumer data into traditional reporting, she's been able to grow her team from 1 to what I believe is currently 8 individuals over the past couple of years. And so once again, let's imagine that we're in that annual budget meeting. Instead of just talking about spend, we flip to the next presentation slide in our deck, and we're able to speak to the fact that among those who are aware of our supplier diversity initiative, they're much more likely to think favorably about our brand. They're much more likely to consider our brand, and they're much more likely to purchase our brand's products or services either frequently or all the time. Or on the next slide in that presentation, maybe we speak to the fact that if we invest to increase awareness of our supplier diversity initiative by just 1%, that could equal an estimated hundreds of thousands of new people thinking favorably about our brand, considering our brand, and actually purchasing our brand's products or services. Your peers are also elevating the conversation by being able to speak the language of their corporations with this data that's focused on the brand and the bottom line. So for example, instead of we took home 4 of the latest and greatest awards last year, which is great, don't get me wrong, you deserve every single award that you receive for the hard work that you do. Being able to speak to those who are aware of our supplier diversity initiatives are 400 times more likely to think favorably about our brand. So going back to our boardroom example, knowing that those who are aware of your supplier diversity initiative are much more likely to perceive your brand as committed to diversity, and then being able to share with the decision makers with regards to budget that once folks perceive your brand as committed to diversity, they're much more likely to think favorably of your brand, consider your brand, and purchase your brand's products or services. We're also seeing your peers, as was already alluded to, use this information to bridge and drive impact across departments, really making diversity and supplier diversity a true part of the culture organization-wide. So maybe going into a marketing meeting, and instead of talking about how diversity and supplier diversity is the right thing to do, being able to speak to the fact that Latinx families and high-income African-American consumers are much more likely to believe it's important that corporations hire diverse employees. And using this data from the CDI, in addition to the dynamic reporting tool, which it includes, to dig deeper and strike up meaningful conversations with marketing, communications, PR, procurement, DEI, the list goes on, about how authentic communication of diversity and supplier diversity initiatives can help drive the business forward. And finally, your peers are using consumer data to create meaningful strategy, plan ahead, and track and assess and improve their initiatives over time. So for example, instead of speaking to how our spend with diverse businesses contributed to maybe the creation of 2,000 jobs or something of that nature, understanding how our customers are 50% more likely to think it's important that corporations value diversity and how that's different than folks who aren't currently purchasing our products or services. Once again, the whole story is important, but for most corporations, consumer impact is the one missing piece of the puzzle. So let's hear one more time from your peers on how they're using this information to be strategic within their organizations.
Making it real and helping it land is important. So I've worked with a variety of groups, certainly worked with the market research group initially to make sure that the CDI would have credibility within our organization, that the research standards were there. And of course, that was an easy meet. Hootology's got that covered in spades. So we did that first. Then brought in the marketing group for them to understand the connection to revenue and got a lot of excitement around that. I've also worked with our DEI group. And this group, I'll go back again this year and we'll do a deep dive into CDI instead of just an overview, where they can really start seeing the drivers to our commitment to diversity and how that impacts the world, because it will help build the business case for an investment in workforce diversity as well as supplier diversity.
As a supplier diversity practitioner, it's always a best practice to be in lockstep with your DE&I leads. And they've been a really important partner to have as we go throughout this process with Hootology. But I would say even more important have been the marketing research, consumer insights partners at all the different brands of Ahold Delhaize USA. We brought them in on the beginning for their input, which really helped when we got the Hootology results back, because they were really helpful in helping us like shop the results around. And the merchandising teams speak in the terms of units and sales, and the marketing teams speak in the terms of consumer trends and campaigns. But the consumer insights team, they talk in terms of percentages and lifts. And that's the language that really, regardless of who you belong to in a corporation, everyone can get their heads around. So that's been really helpful.
I just met yesterday with our public relations team and our public relations agency. And we're talking about messaging and public messaging. And when I started sharing some facts from the CDI and some details, those are proof points that are really powerful and talking points for your C-suite executives, for talking to employees, for sharing to potential employment candidates when they can hear about the impact that supplier diversity has.
And so, as was mentioned, what we're seeing with this type of consumer data is supplier diversity not only reporting to the C-suite on its impact, but also strategizing with marketing and market research to create targeted and authentic campaigns, with PR and communications to put together authentic messages of the stories that they have to share around the diversity and supplier diversity work that they're doing, working with procurement to help their business units understand that supplier diversity isn't just a check the box or the right thing to do, but it's something that will actually move the business forward and is an imperative to continued success and growth. And finally, bridging to DEI to understand the impact that perception of diversity, that awareness of supplier diversity can have on potential employees who are making employment decisions in an incredibly competitive marketplace. And so by bringing together traditional metrics and this new type of consumer data, these folks are able to paint the full picture of the impact of their initiatives and to powerfully move them forward within their organizations. So with the CDI, measuring the impact on the brand and bottom line is and continues to be the goal. But at Hootology, we understand this isn't the reason why we do diversity and supplier diversity. These initiatives remain a social imperative, but we also know now that they're a business imperative. Corporations have the power to drive change and make an impact. And just like any other division within a corporation, diversity and supplier diversity need to be equipped to speak the language of their corporation to garner support and continued growth. So we like to think about our work over the past 5 years with the Corporate Diversity Index as an important piece of the puzzle to help diversity and supplier diversity professionals get the support they need to create that change. And my only hope for today is that the information shared is going to spark some new conversations and new ideas for you about what other data is out there and how you can go about sharing it to continue to champion that change within your organizations and beyond. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time and attention. Would love to, with the next 10, 15 minutes we have available here, just open it up for any questions you might have, any conversation that you might want to have. I'm not there in person, so this is the opportunity we have now over Zoom, but you also are more than welcome to reach out to me anytime. And if there aren't a bunch of questions, you're more than welcome to grab some extra time for a bathroom break before your next session. But thank you, and we'd love to open it up for conversation.
We've just got the mic that runs between people, so there'll be a quick pause. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to jump in with? Also, folks who are online can submit them there as well. If there's any online ones, maybe any of the mic folks can speak to that. I would love to hear a little bit more about what are the first conversations and steps that happen when folks are working with you specifically in sort of setting that readiness and that prep work to start taking a more conscientious approach into setting this up long term.
In terms of those conversations, I mean, every organization's different. And what we typically find is we collaborate with supplier diversity, with diversity professionals within the organization, answer any questions they might have. Oftentimes they pull in market research. That's who we typically work with within an organization, even though this type of work is in particular for supplier diversity professionals. But, just depending on the familiarity with market research and how that works, there can be quite a few meetings to get people onboarded and set up, or just a handful. But we really are committed to making this information as usable and digestible as possible. And if anyone does have any questions about that process and maybe what it felt like for some of your peers, certainly ask around. I think in terms of the organizations that we work with in collecting this consumer data and reporting it, they're always happy to share their opinions and perspectives in terms of how they've been using it and what the process was like along the way.
Great. Oh, perfect. We have a question here.
Awesome. Hi. Thank you so much for that. It's awesome to put the data to be able to tell the right story, I think, moving forward. I had two questions for you, actually. One is, how have you seen the data shift over the past couple of years? And do you have any predictions for the future, particularly pertaining to awareness? And how would you think that corporations can do our parts in improving those numbers and building awareness of it so that it gets better over time?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mentioned it in the presentation briefly, but we've been tracking this information since 2019. And so while we're in between 4 and 5% in the US of awareness of supplier diversity, when we first started, I think that first number was 2.7%. So we have seen some substantial growth over the past several years in terms of awareness of supplier diversity. But I think there's a number of things as we look forward to keep in mind. In the past, up until now, supplier diversity has in many organizations been pretty siloed, and supplier diversity professionals, the folks who know the most about it, their role was to work with suppliers like us. It wasn't to share the stories of the impact that that's having on the organization. That wasn't to find authentic ways to share the stories with consumers who care whether or not products and services are being sourced from folks who exemplify them. And so I think as we move forward with this type of information and folks in marketing and PR and communications who know the customers and consumers so well, I think brands are going to find new ways to help folks learn about what they're doing from a supplier diversity standpoint. One stat that wasn't in this study, once folks are educated on what supplier diversity initiatives are, I think it's well over 60% feel like it's important that those types of initiatives are being put forth at corporations. And again, I think it's over 65% believe that, or not believe, but say that they'd like to learn more about these types of initiatives and what corporations are doing. So what we see there is that gap between 5% awareness and 65+% of folks who are receptive to these types of messages want to learn more. There's a real opportunity to communicate and share and educate on the work that you're doing to continue to lift that awareness number up over time.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, I'm wondering, we've rolled into June, and so for many of us, that means we've entered into the month of high gay, sashay yourself into great deals, and all of the lovely rainbow washing that sometimes happens. I'm wondering if there's an organic example of how to express the supply diversity commitment that you could offer for folks who are maybe trying not to come off just like they're rainbow washing or putting that info out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important point. And so the Corporate Diversity Index, this is a quantitative study. And so it gives us the what. It lets us know the numbers, the percentages, and it doesn't necessarily give us the whys or the hows. But one thing I can say is last year, we did do a qualitative follow-up study in the US because we noticed a dip. And this isn't direct to your question, but I think it's helpful and illustrative, is we noticed a dip among certain members of the BIPOC community in terms of their perception of the importance of some of these things. And so we wanted to find out why. And the word, more or less words, was the authenticity and wanting to be able to see the actual examples and results of what organizations were doing to, at that time, put their money where their mouth was in terms of all the promises that were being made. And at least for that community, one area where there was particular importance was in terms of how corporations are treating their internal employees. And so are they creating opportunities for new education and growth? And what are they doing in terms of advancing the careers of folks within their organizations? So I know that doesn't speak directly to the LGBTQ plus community, but I think it's illustrative of what consumers are looking for in terms of knowing what corporations are doing. The rainbow logo is certainly not enough.
Great. Deborah?
Hi, Jose. It's Deborah from Kellogg Company. Great presentation today. I just wanted to build a little bit upon what Chris had said. The information that you provided for Kellogg Company, we've actually shared with our Kellogg North American leadership team and actually up to the board of directors level. And that's so important for them to understand how supplier diversity is aligned with corporate objectives, because sometimes we're perceived as something, as you mentioned, good to do, and we float alongside procurement, and we're not necessarily aligned with the corporate objectives. So great that Chris brought that up. But I guess my question is, you do a lot of follow-up and a lot of additional slicing and dicing of data. And maybe if you could just share with the audience some of the ways that you can get into that, the big data, and really start to answer specific questions about consumer groups in particular. because I think that's extremely valuable, especially when a marketing campaign is targeting a particular group.
Spot on, Deborah. And that's one of the most powerful aspects of the Corporate Diversity Index and the information that's provided. We have a dynamic reporting tool through Tableau, and it allows our brands to look at any number of demographic variables to understand the perceptions of those folks. So, in the presentation, I gave a quick glimpse at what that looked like in video form, but, when we think about different groups and wanting to be able to understand how they may feel differently than others, that's really one of the most powerful aspects of the tool. And in terms of our partnership among our brands, we don't just drop off a static report or that dynamic reporting tool and walk away. We really, we believe strongly in being there to support folks within brands to share this information and make sure it gets used. And part of that is what Deborah mentioned. On an ongoing basis over the course of the year, we're sending out infographics where we're not making you do it, we're taking a deeper dive into the information. And so we actually just sent one out to our brands on some interesting findings around the LGBTQ plus community for Pride Month. And so we'll do that throughout the year and continue to be a resource. And then also, our brands that we work with come to us often, and we've actually created a way on our website where they have a private portal where if they're getting ready for a meeting in 5 days with, like Deborah mentioned, with the board, and they want to be able to speak to a few specific metrics and don't know exactly where to find those, they can fill out a simple form and we can put together that presentation slide or those bullet points or whatever the case might be for them. So, our end goal is to make sure that the information that we're going out there and collecting is as usable as possible and is getting used within organizations. And so I'd like to stay involved and be a resource as much as we can.
Great. I think we have one question. One online question.
Lisa Atkinson asks, if you haven't shared publicly your supplier diversity program, how do you start to gauge and ask about perception?
That's a great question. Every organization is different, and you want to think about timing. You're not going to get as much in terms of awareness, right? Because you haven't actually either established or gone out publicly with your supplier diversity initiative, but you'd still be able to gauge perception of your brand as one that's being committed to diversity, where there's a lot of different factors that go into that. But we always say, earlier the better, because it allows you to establish that baseline. And then as you move forward with rolling out new initiatives with your program and how you're communicating that, you're able to track and assess over time. The Corporate Diversity Index is designed to be an annual year-over-year study where we're able to continue to check in, assess, reevaluate, and move forward. And so, while there might not be much in terms of awareness at that point, I think there's still a lot of value in at least thinking about establishing those baselines and starting to gather that information for your internal conversations.
Great.
My question, Steve Martin from Corporate Specialty Services. We've been fortunate that we do have quite a few corporates that have come on board with us as our clients. But one of the things that I've kind of noticed over the years, because we're one of the original ones, is the fact that I think that a lot of supplier diversity professionals within the corporates have, I think, one stumbling block. And you touched a bit about it on one of your slides, which was procurement. And it seems, if I understand it correctly, and some corporates could correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the corporates will establish a supplier diversity group, sometimes one person, sometimes half a dozen. But a lot of times they don't seem to be able to get their mandate across to the procurement people, which are the people that will give suppliers the opportunity to work with those companies. So I'm just wondering, is it a miscommunication from the top that they're not voicing what they want to do with their company, all the way down through supplier diversity, down to procurement, or what is the case?
We have about 1 minute for an answer as well.
And so I'll make this brief. I mean, I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience could add a lot of perspective in terms of their organizations and maybe any challenges with procurement they're having. And so I can't really speak to that. But the one thing I will say, and just reiterate from the presentation, is one area where we're seeing folks within supplier diversity use this consumer data is in communicating to procurement that if we're able to continue to grow supplier diversity, continue to be perceived as a brand that's committed to diversity, that can have an impact on our brand favorability and ultimately how much of our products or services we're selling. And so it's another data point to help in that conversation to bring procurement on board with the importance of taking these initiatives seriously. And so for what it's worth, that's where we're seeing it being used, and hopefully it's being helpful for organizations in terms of having those conversations and getting that buy-in with procurement.
Perfect timing. So thank you for everyone who's joined us virtually and in person. Thank you as well for your presentation, for the wealth of insight, your candor, and ideas. For folks who are looking for what's up next, the EY pitch is going to be soon, so stay tuned for that. And I believe we have a short break now. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Players, put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do? 24 karat magic in the air. Head to toe so clear. Look out. Pop, pop, it's showtime. Showtime, showtime, showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Gone time. Oh, they don't know. Gone time. I bet they know as soon as we walk in. Showed up. I'm wearing Cubitt links. Yeah. Designer mix. Yeah. Inglewood's finest shoes. Whoop, whoop. Don't look too hard, might hurt yourself. Known to give the color red the blues. Woo, shit. I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up. So many pretty girls around me and they're waking up the rocket. Keep up. Why you mad? Fix your face. Ain't my fault they all be jocking. Keep up. Players only. Come on, put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do? 24 karat magic in the air. Head to toe so clear. Look out. Second verse for the hustlers. Gangsters. Bad bitches and your ugly ass friends. I cannot preach. I cannot preach. I gotta show them how a pimp get it in. First, take your sip. Do your dip. Spend your money like money ain't shit. Ooh, ooh. We too fresh. Got to blame it on Jesus. Hashtag blessed. They ain't ready for me. I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up. So many pretty girls around me and they're waking up the rocket. Keep up. Why you mad? Fix your face. Ain't my fault they all be jocking. Keep up. Players only. Come on, put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do? What you trying to do?
Please join us in the Frontenac room for the EY pitch competition.
Backlash of somebody's lack of love, or you can start speaking up. Nothing's gonna hurt you the way the words do when they settle need your skin. Kept on the inside and no sunlight, sometimes a shadow wins. But I wonder what would happen if you say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave with what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave. Just want to see you. I just want to see you. Just want to see you. I want to see you be brave. Just want to see you. I just want to see you. Just want to see you. I want to see you be brave. Everybody's been there, everybody's been stared down by the enemy, falling for the fear and then to disappear and bow down to the mighty. But don't run, stop holding your tongue. Maybe there's a way out of the cage where you live. Maybe one of these days you can let the light in. Show me how big your brave is. Say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave with what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave. And since your history of silence won't do you any good,
Please join us in the Frontenac room for the EY pitch competition.
empty. Why don't you tell them the truth? Say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave with what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave. Just want to see you. Just want to see you. Just want to see you. I want to see you be brave. Just want to see you. Just want to see you. Just want to see you. See you be brave. Just want to see you. Just want to see you. Just want to see you. I just want to see you. I just want to see you. I just want to see you.
Come on in, let's go. Yeah! Let's go! All right, okay. All right, okay. All right, okay. Return to the Mac. Get 'em what it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit. Me get up. First shot, come strut walking. A little bit of humble, a little bit of cautious. Somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby's for the game. Nope, nope, y'all can't copy up. Bad moonwalking, and this here is our party. My posse's been on Broadway, and we did it all way. Chrome music. I shed my skin and put my bones into everything I record to it. And yeah, I'm on. Let that stage light go and shine on
Good
down.
morning and welcome to the Supplier Diversity Session. Please welcome AJ Stewart, Manager, Membership and Supplier Diversity, Canada's LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce.
You guys have seen me so much. Every time I get more hoot and hollers. I love it. Keep it up. It's really good for my ego. Thank you so much for joining us for the EY pitch competition. Just a quick reminder that speaker bios are available on the event page under the speaker tab. And while you're online, please go ahead and visit our exhibitors who are happy to share how they can help you succeed in your business. And while you're visiting our exhibitors, we really encourage you to network with some of our virtual folks. We have a lot of people attending virtually, so go ahead and jump into a virtual breakout room. It's not just in person. As a side note, I've been walking around, and any certified suppliers that I see, I've got little, they look like this. They're little pins, but they say LGBT, certified LGBT business enterprise on it. So if you'd like one in your CGLCC certified supplier, let me know. I've got some in my pocket. And now please join me in welcoming your host for the EY pitch competition from Ernst & Young, ESGS Canada Lead, EY Supply Chain Services, ESGS, Lori Benson.
Well, hello. It has been a fantastic year, and I can share with you this is the most exciting part of the business forum for me personally, and for many of our folks at EY. And I just want to take a couple of seconds to kind of talk a little bit about the pitch. And, you know, I will say when we first started this, it was kind of like putting one foot in front of the other, or some kind of leap off a cliff into some abyss that we didn't know where we were going to go, but we did. And it's been fantastic, and what a great journey. And I can't say how much I appreciate the CGLCC and all the people. And I know Daryl, somewhere in the room here, can because he was the one that I kind of said, let's leap off this cliff together. And here we are today, and we have some fantastic entrepreneurs that have come through our pitch program. And I'm so pleased to say that so many of them have become part of our EY extended family. And that's what it's all about, is continuing to be part of the community. So thank you to all the EY judges who continue to make this an amazing event for EY and CGLCC. Okay, we can't do it without the pitch participants. They are incredible. We have a few alum here in the room today, and I know that everyone who's gone through the program, it really has, for us, solidified how amazing these businesses are. And anyone who says these are small businesses and they're not ready, they don't know. They just don't know. So here's a little secret. You need to pay attention today to the pitches and really understand how far these businesses have come in such a short period of time. And they're all to be applauded. So thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna get off of that tangent because this is about the pitches. And so today, I forgot to mention, we have enough alum now that we're actually gonna do a US-Canada pitch off. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. And today's winner will be awarded a scholarship, a $5,000 scholarship to the Tuck School of Business, and we're really excited about that. And today we have Kedar, Amber, and Shila, who are going to be pitching today. So we're going to start off right away with Kedar Patil from Hydronique Hydration. So if we're ready to go, I believe he's pitching virtually. Hello there. And away we go. Your 10 minutes starts now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kedar Patil, and I go by the pronouns he and him. I'm the founder and CEO of Hydronique Hydration, which is a wellness brand focused on creating nutritious, sugar-free, powdered beverages for busy people. I've always struggled with hydration and nutrition for most of my adult life. Working in healthcare, I've always had irregular hours, which made it difficult to develop a routine. And when at work, sometimes I would be so focused on patient care that I would simply forget to eat or drink anything for an entire shift. The pandemic exacerbated these issues, since the protective equipment that I would wear created a barrier to eat or drink anything during the workday. And when I did have a spare moment in the middle of the night, the only things available were plain water or sugary juices in the hospital vending machine. There were limited options for nutritious, low sugar, flavorful, and convenient beverages. I noticed this was also a very common problem amongst my colleagues as well. But the truth is, we all struggle with healthy eating and nutrition at one point or another. Maybe we're at work and our busy day distracts us from the signals our own bodies are sending. Or maybe we're traveling and the only things available are expensive sugary juices. Or maybe we're at a concert or festival and finding a hydrating drink becomes an inconvenient task. And when you look at bottled, ready-to-drink beverages, they're inconvenient in that you have to carry bulky bottles around to work, or maybe they're not even allowed through airport security or at a concert or festival. They're expensive both to produce and transport, and you're essentially paying for expensive water with tons of sugar. And they're wasteful, so they're large plastic bottles. I thought there had to be a better option. That's when I decided to create my own sugar-free powdered beverage. In 2021, I formed Hydronique Hydration and worked with a certified manufacturer in Florida to create my first powdered formulation containing 12 vitamins, 5 minerals, amino acids, antioxidants, and electrolytes. You just easily tear one of these portable stick packets and pour it into 16 ounces of cold water to create a healthy on-the-go beverage with a refreshing elderberry taste. It was important for me that Hydronique Hydration be a health-conscious brand, and so we're plant-based, gluten-free, dairy-free, keto-friendly, with no sugar or calories. We also have no artificial sweeteners, colors, or dyes. There are many electrolyte beverages on the market. For instance, there's Liquid IV, Noon, Emergency, Pedialyte. These are all focused on electrolytes, but they don't have that many nutrients. On the other hand, when you look at this new category of nutrient-rich powdered beverages, Athletic Greens is really the leader. Athletic Greens contains a whole spectrum of nutrients, including prebiotics, probiotics, adaptogens, mushrooms, which is all great, but it's incredibly expensive, selling at approximately $199 per month, which is really inaccessible for most consumers. So that's where Hydronique comes in that it contains more nutrients than the typical electrolyte beverage, but it's also affordable. I believe that every person deserves to have access to healthy choices, and it shouldn't cost them an arm and a leg, especially during these difficult economic times. Another key differentiator of Hydronique is that it's sugar-free with no calories. If you look at some of the leading competitors, they all have at least some sugar, and Pedialyte even uses artificial sweeteners. So when we look at the greater consumer packaged goods landscape, health-conscious, low-sugar options are really becoming the growing trend. There's a significant opportunity for this type of product. Both dietary supplements and electrolyte beverages are multi-billion-dollar industries and are expected to grow over the next decade. And going back to Athletic Greens, which again is the leader in this new category of nutrient-rich powdered beverages, it was recently valued at $1.2 billion. And last year's sales topped $150 million, despite being a relatively new brand. So even if Hydronique, which again is positioned as a more affordable sugar-free alternative, even if Hydronique just takes 1% of that market share, it ends up being $1 million business. But ultimately, my goal is to create Hydronique Hydration to provide customers for better for body, multi-nutrient beverages that are convenient, affordable, refreshing, and guilty-free, forming the core foundation of daily nutrition. And that last part is key, the idea that no matter how busy your day is, no matter what you ate or drink in your day, you can always rely on Hydronique to provide you with at least a baseline level of nutrition. So how is Hydronique doing? Well, I launched in mid-December 2021 with one flavor, elderberry, containing 30 packets per pouch and selling at $39.99 at USD. I focused on a direct-to-consumer sales approach through e-commerce, mainly on Amazon.com, specifically for the US market. The go-to-market strategy was to advertise directly on Amazon and also use nano-influencers on YouTube for unboxing videos and podcasters, particularly in the healthcare and travel-related categories. The target markets were really those same ones I mentioned earlier, namely busy professionals, travelers, and festival goers. Although during COVID, the last two have not many people have been traveling or going to festivals in the winter months, so sales have been slow for that. But overall, sales have been, over the last 5 months period, were approximately $70,000 with a healthy margin of 45%. And again, this is essentially just from a brief launch on Amazon. And the conversion rate on Amazon is 10%, which is more than double the typical Amazon product at 5%. But at the end of the day, I'm doing this for customers. And so what are they saying? Well, I've gotten some really great feedback, and this is just an example of a review. I will admit I was skeptical before trying Hydronique hydration. I tried a lot of drink mixes that promised a great taste, but this is the only one that I can say fits the bill. It isn't chalky and has a smooth, refreshing taste. And if you're looking for something to add to your daily water, this is the perfect fit. And that's the most rewarding part of this journey, to realize that people are actually loving the product that you created. Customers are saying that Hydronique makes them feel better than the typical beverage. And so even though this was just a very short period of time, Hydronique is really delivering on its value proposition and showing that there really is a need for this type of product on the market. I have ambitious plans to grow and scale in the next few years. In terms of product, I plan to introduce new flavors and potentially more ingredients like adaptogens and probiotics, and maybe even powdered CBD in the future. Sustainability is obviously incredibly important, and I'm working to decrease the packaging size, potentially move to tablets or tubs, and the holy grail is really biodegradable packaging in the future. In terms of sales channels, I certainly want to expand on my own website, which is now up, hydroniquehydration.com, and expand into retail and potentially other avenues like Web3 and NFTs for consumer loyalty programs. And for funding, I've been completely self-funded, but certainly I will need external funding very soon. And I just included this chart to show that I've been thinking about financials. There's a lot of numbers here. We'll probably break even within the next few months, and then I have ambitious goals to rapidly grow in the next few years. So finally, the why. So I explained why I created Hydronique, because I felt there was a need for healthy, affordable, sugar-free beverages for busy people like myself. And I explained why I think Hydronique has a lot of future potential for scalability based on the proof of concept and what I've been able to deliver in the last few months. But what about why for this competition? Why am I hoping to win this specific competition?
2 minutes left there, Kedar.
Thank you. So the prize for this competition is an intensive educational experience at Tech School of Business at Dartmouth. I wanted to find out more about this, so I reached out to Kaylee, owner of Nona Foods, and a previous winner of this very pitch competition. And she talked about how valuable this experience was and all the things she learned. My background is in healthcare, so I am very new to this world of entrepreneurship. And in fact, this is the very first pitch competition I've ever competed in. So, I have a lot to learn, and I think this experience at Tech will teach me a lot of things about marketing, finance, and logistics in particular. And so winning this pitch competition will also help me elevate Hydronique and take it to the next level. Finally, I want to thank CGLCC and Paige at the Young Entrepreneurship Program, as well as my mentor throughout the year, Chris McKechnie. And I also want to thank Lori at EY for this pitch competition, and my mentor at EY, Lindsay, and also Kaylee at Nona Foods, who were all very gracious with their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kedar. Well, that was a good pitch, and we're going to move right on to our next pitch. So thank you, and I'm now going to introduce Amber Cubitt, and Amber is in the room, so if you want to come up and start your pitch, so when you're ready.
All right, Amber, your 10 minutes starts now.
Life is exhausting. If we've learned anything over the last few years, it is that life is full of the unexpected. And navigating this can be overwhelming, confusing, tiring. Life is exhausting, but your food doesn't have to be. I'm here today on behalf of Spoonin', a plant-based and gluten-free smoothie bowl company that is focused on the enjoyment of food. But more importantly, I'm here today on behalf of those who are consistently searching for options that meet their dietary needs. At Spoonin', we have brought innovation to the food industry in an area that is only growing. Did you know that in 2018, Canada reported 2.3 million vegans and 2.3 million vegetarians and 850,000 vegans? And this number continues to grow as more and more people explore the benefits of a plant-based diet. In 2015, a study showed that 1.9% of the Canadian population followed a gluten-free diet, whether that be because of a gluten intolerance or celiac disease. And to add perspective to an already under-researched and underfunded issue, it is estimated that nearly 90% of celiac cases have yet to even be diagnosed. Now, we have a large customer base outside of this population, but Spoonin is focused on inclusivity. If you're here today, it is because you hold space where most people don't. It is because you see those who are misrepresented, undervalued, and passed over. And today I'm asking you to see something you may not have seen previously. Now, there are many reasons why someone may choose a vegan or gluten-free diet. Perhaps they're trying to lessen their environmental impact, lessen the burden on livestock. Maybe they are lactose intolerant, gluten intolerant, or have the genetic markers for celiac disease. Perhaps they're trying to decrease the inflammation in their body, improve their overall health, or that this diet is conducive to their religious beliefs. Now, something I realized very quickly when I was told that the inflammation in my body was so significant and that I had an intolerance to gluten was that following a vegan gluten-free diet is a privilege. Not only is celiac testing not covered by the Ontario healthcare system, it is so much more expensive to buy gluten-free. To give you an idea, it is to buy cereals that are gluten-free, it's about 205% more expensive. And to buy baked goods and breads, on average, it's about 267% more expensive. Restaurants are known to charge more for substitutions, and health food stores charge a premium for these sought-after goods. And that's if you can find them in the first place. There is, without a doubt, a need for vegan and gluten-free food options. And this is why I'm so passionate about what I do. At Spoonin, we have formulated a ready-made smoothie bowl that comes frozen and can be thawed in less than 2 minutes. Now, if you've had a smoothie bowl before, you know the joy of such a refreshing meal. And if you have yet to experience this, it's kind of like frozen yogurt, but made with plant-based milk and frozen fruit. You take the smooth, creamy base, and we sprinkle some healthy toppers. Now, you may be thinking, I can go 3 blocks down the road and get this from a smoothie bar. But what if I told you you could have our bowls at your fingertips? Our bowls are made to thaw for the ultimate convenience without compromising flavor or nutrition. Spoonin has developed a smoothie bowl recipe that is uniquely designed for changing states, thawing from frozen to creamy. So you get that ice cream consistency that you love, but in a plant-based option. And from my market research thus far, we have yet to find any direct competitors. Essentially, we've taken the smoothie bar concept, elevated it, and brought it right to your kitchen. Not to mention that the cost of eating takeout is almost always more expensive than eating at home. Spoonin smoothie bowls are nearly 2/3 the cost of your average smoothie bowl that's made to order. And as our business grows, so do our profit margins. One of our main focuses is to ensure that we maintain affordability so that people searching for these options don't feel limited. Spoonin smoothie bowls are currently available at 19 cafes and grocery stores, ranging from Ottawa all the way to Turkey Point, which is located on the north shore of Lake Erie. Some you may recognize are Dar's Country Market in Elora, Vincenzo's in Waterloo, and La Rose Bakery at their Milton location. Our e-commerce website is also set up for anyone looking for the delivery option. I should mention for any smoothie bowl fans in the audience, we tend to deliver to Toronto every 2 weeks. My personal favorite, the farmers markets. For the 2022 season, you can find us in Georgetown, Milton, and Rockwood. Our focus as a small business began as just that, small. We reached out to other local small businesses who saw the importance of community and artisan goods, and we created symbiotic relationships with our retailers and our customers who began to know us by name. And this is how we've grown, by having conversations, by understanding the needs of our customers, by placing real value on real people. We started small, and that local business mindset comes with knowing the worth of your product and the people consuming it. Now, what about the nutrients? With a minimum of 25 grams of plant protein, no added refined sugars, essential healthy fats, and a variety of fruits, I can assure you, we have covered our bases. And as a business owner, I know this is a selling point, but I'm also highly aware of the fact that large corporations tend to use marketing tactics such as fear-mongering, pointing out insecurities, and ultimately capitalizing on toxic diet culture. But I'm not going to do that. The product is nutritious, and that information stands alone for whatever the consumer wishes to do with it. Speaking of toxic diet culture, I'm going to share something personal, and this may be a sensitive topic for anyone in the audience who has maybe struggled with or does struggle with an eating disorder. I have gone through periods of intense food tracking, macro counting, food restriction, which ultimately led to food overconsumption, and just a whole lot of guilt surrounding food. And I know that I'm not alone in that. But I will never extend this to my business. Spoonin' has been a journey for me. It is about food that has the power to help people feel good, to feel liberated. Because when someone sees the Spoonin' brand, I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel like they don't even need to read the label. Like I said, it's been a journey for me. In the late summer of 2020, I launched with the frozen smoothie bowls. Sorry, I think we skipped a slide, but that's okay. So in 2017, I started the business as a pop-up smoothie bar. And in 2020, when the world shut down, I launched the frozen smoothie bowls. And in 2021, when I saw this potential for the product, I rebranded it as Spoonin'. So to give you an idea of our past growth, what you see here, and our future growth potential, in the pivotal year of 2020, we sold 21,000. The following year, the year of the rebrand, 37,000. And we are now on track to hit over 60,000 in our current fiscal year. When I see Spoonin' 5 years from now, I see availability nationwide. I see our very own production facility, a team of skilled and supported individuals. I see a culture of food inclusivity that we've shared with thousands of customers. I see a variety of flavors, and I see delivery trucks splashed with our brightly colored logo, and projected sales of 500,000. 5 years ago, I began the journey of owning a business, one that I actually started in the very town that I grew up in. And it's funny, I never quite knew how to vocalize my identity. It was something I was always just kind of figuring out. But over the past few years, Spoonin' has given me this gift of expression, a way of connecting all of the things that I believe in with a community who is willing and eager to listen. So thank you.
Another great pitch. This can be a hard decision. We do have one more pitch to listen to. And so thank you, Amber. And I'm now going to introduce Shila LeBlanc from Restorative Approach. Sheila, if you'd like to go ahead with your pitch.
Thank you so much, and welcome to my pitch for Restorative Approach. My name is Shila. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a queer settler here in Shabuktuk or Halifax, where I'm calling you from today. And my professional title is Restorative Practitioner. And I'm here to tell you about Restorative Approach, which is a business I launched a tender 9 months ago. So to give you the gist, I'm guiding organizations and individuals through a positive restorative approach to conflict at work. And I'm supporting folks in learning to embody a restorative approach. So put more simply, I'm offering conflict resolution from the restorative lens and workshops about this lens. So I'm dealing with all kinds of conflict. It's all very interesting and each case is different, but I'll share with you a pretty classic situation. So let's say you're at work and your colleague Taz has been making some really inappropriate comments. At first, you kind of laugh it off, but it's really starting to get to you. You're feeling increasingly anxious at work, and you don't feel comfortable talking to Taz. So you sit down with your manager and you tell them what's going on, and your manager says, okay, yeah, I'll take care of it. But unfortunately, your manager has a really full plate and happens to be pretty conflict avoidant. So nothing changes. So you're feeling increasingly stressed. Now you sit down with HR and you say, hey, this is what's going on. And HR says, don't worry, we'll do an investigation. But as you can imagine, no one actually stops to talk to you about what do you need, what would you like to see, what are the impacts here? And things only get worse. You start to feel really isolated from your team as the investigation unfolds, because now there's rumors and people are choosing sides. And worse, other departments and even other businesses hear about this conflict. So some of your professional collaborations are now feeling threatened. Finally, a report comes out, but it says because there's no evidence, no witnesses, your claims are unfounded. And so nothing changes. You continue to go to work and work with Taz, and you're just feeling so stressed. The conflict has not been resolved between you. So you do the last thing you feel like you can do, which is hire a lawyer. And as you can imagine, so much time and so much money is lost. And at the end of that process, everyone is still in conflict. So maybe this rings a bell. And the truth of the matter is that unresolved conflict costs. In 2022, we're living in an increasingly disconnected world. And what I know in the work that I do is that leaders are experts in their fields, but they're not leaders in conflict management. And it's actually leading through the harder moments that matters most. And this is where most of our leaders tend to falter. It's easy to lead when things are good. And navigating conflict in a good way takes a lot of time and skills that a lot of folks simply don't possess. And the impacts of conflict at work are serious and costly. So if there's underlying or explicit conflict at work, this can lead to increased turnover, people go on leaves, there's lack of productivity, and a workplace can become a toxic environment. So when we think about our common responses, so HR, investigations, hiring legal counsel, these rarely bring a resolution that is felt. There might be an outcome or conclusion on paper, but this does not translate into real life. The problem is still not solved because the relationships have not yet been addressed. So Morneau Chappelle released quite a statistic in 2021, which is that conflict costs Canadian businesses $2 billion just in that year. And I would argue that that money was not well spent. And further, COVID has increased conflict and decreased our capacity to navigate it. So some of my recent work has been around return to work and the hybrid working model. There's a lot of conflict right now, even just in relation to the pandemic. So this is why we opened Restorative Approach. It's time to shift away from these patterns that are simply not helping us and lead toward guides like me who can support us in navigating conflict so we can work together and resolve things before things escalate any further. So in that example, what might have changed if you and Taz had had a good quality, honest conversation? So now I'd like to share with you my vision for Restorative Approach and what a healthy, connected working world can look like. But before I go on, it's important to acknowledge that restorative processes are rooted in Indigenous ways of knowing. This is not a settler process. And I think that this is actually why it works so well. This is not some magical solution that I've come up with. And Indigenous communities have used this way of working forever. So as a white person in this work, I like to acknowledge that fact and also appreciate that we're able to use it. It's a beautiful way of looking at things. So what am I talking about? Well, the term restorative itself means having the ability to restore health, strength, or a feeling of well-being. But a restorative process is all about relationships. The goal is to work relationally. So our guiding questions are, what is our relationship to ourselves, those around us, and our broader community? And we mean this in a basic way. Are our relationships strong and healthy, or are they tense and broken? And to share more with you about this gorgeous lens, I have an image of a circle because this is a really holistic understanding of our connections to one another. So first, Connection is medicine. It's a human instinct, and it's vital that we honor this reality that humans are made to connect. We need to take care of this part of ourselves. And the other thing I love about the restorative lens is that conflict is viewed as natural and an opportunity. So not that we're, happy when there's conflict, but we tend to view conflict as a bad sign, when in fact, conflict can be really generative. And making mistakes is how we grow as individuals. As children, we're taught to say sorry, but in adulthood, we tend to land in places of defensiveness, avoidance, or denial. And it's quite rare these days for people to really stand up and say, yes, I made a mistake. And worse, some spaces are more focused on legal liability than on doing what's right. So from the restorative lens, responsibility and accountability are encouraged. It's amazing for people to be honest. There's so much power in honesty, because once there's an acknowledgement, then we can decide, what are we going to do about this? Where do we go from here? And there's also this deep understanding that resolving conflict builds trust. It's not comfortable, but if we can get through those hard moments in good ways, we're stronger than before it happened. We have deeper bonds. And there's also a view in restorative justice that healing or that harm ripples out, in the sense that a harmful moment can have unanticipated negative consequences, but the same can be said for healing. Healing ripples out as well. There can be profound implications when we take the time to manage these situations. And it's remarkable in my years of work, what can happen when people are given the chance to work together in good faith. People rise. So our solution, we're increasing access to restorative processes, both proactively and reactively, to find sustainable, meaningful outcomes by confidentially managing and resolving issues, to reduce risk, and support folks in returning to the basics of human connection. And our services are low risk and low cost compared to traditional methods. So we kind of envision ourselves being step one. We want to fill that gap and find that kind of sweet spot where we can get folks talking and resolving before things escalate.
2 minutes there, Shila.
Thanks. We're low risk in the sense that restorative conversations are clarifying. And even if we're not the right fit, we know what needs to happen. And we're low cost in the sense that everyone can avoid those escalated steps, because so much of conflict is rooted in a miscommunication. So our pricing model is hourly for conflict and flat rate for education. And we're proud to offer a sliding scale, especially to queer organizations. So how do we do this? Well, first, we make sure that we guide the process and people bring the solutions. This is what sets us apart. So we want to make sure that people have voice and choice. We're saying goodbye to one-size-fits-all responses, and instead we're working with people to figure out what they need. We guide folks through and they bring the resolutions. We're the ones that are flexible and responsive. We're trauma-informed in that we don't cause harm. We are voluntary and consent-based, so we're not always the right fit, but we often are. And we're there to ask important questions like, what happened? How do you feel? What do you need now? And like the circle, it's a holistic way of working. So we offer conflict mediation, workshops and training, and consulting and coaching, because sometimes leaders just need to speak with someone like me about, what are the best ways to handle this in a caring way. And our digital model has been working really well across Turtle Island. We've served HR, nonprofits, private sector, universities, and government. So in closing, building good relations is the best way to ensure a healthy future. It's our collective antidote. So I'm asking you today, are you ready to be the leader that invests in a caring, restorative approach at work? Thank you so much, and open to connecting.
Well, that was another amazing pitch. So as you can see, the judges are going to have a difficult time making a selection, but we are going to do that. And the announcement will be coming later in the program. Thank you very much for your attention.
You have to press play.
Play.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us at the CGLCC's 2022 Digital LGBTQ Global Business Summit Illuminate. My name is Ben Ngobi. I am the Internal Supply Inclusion and Sustainability Program Lead with Accenture, a proud sponsor of the summit. As a global company with a multi-billion-dollar supply chain, we have a significant opportunity to use our procurement processes to drive responsible change at scale. We are committed to responsible buying practices both inside and outside Accenture. We believe inclusive procurement processes create long-term value for our clients and our communities, whilst helping us leverage our buying power for good. At the same time, we hope that these responsible business practices help our suppliers grow their businesses and influencing their own markets, contributing to our collective shared success. It is now time for lunch. Lunch will last about an hour, and we ask that everyone be back in this room for 1:30 p.m. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, folks. As our sponsor said, it's time for lunch, which will be served in the foyer as yesterday. Enjoy.